Our guest is Dominic Benhura, born in 1968 in Murewa in Zimbabwe. He's probably Zimbabwe's best-known artist, although not everyone who has enjoyed his work even knows his name. Dominic is a sculptor who learned at the feet of Zimbabwe's master stoneworkers, but has developed his own uniquely recognized style, a style that has led to commissions in many private collections as well as public art all over the world. Dominic has exhibited across Europe and the United States and at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as solo exhibitions in places as widely spread as Singapore, Tel Aviv and Santa Fe. He's been decorated with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Arts Council of Zimbabwe and won an FMO Development Bank commission from The Hague. Dominic, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So the first thing I'd love to know is what first drew you to wanting to work with stone?
Yeah, actually, because when I was a little boy, then I grew up in a rural area. I was born and bred there in Murewa, in Zimbabwe, which is like about an hour's drive from Harare. I used to mold in clay. So when I came to Harare to start my education in Harare, that's when I came across artists working in stone. So I was so fascinated by the stone media, such that I started helping those guys to polish their work, and that's how I learned the skills.
So when you were still a young boy, before the move at around 13 or so to Harare and just playing with the clay,
yes,
what was it that you were trying to do? Why did you want to play with it?
Yeah, to create artifacts, you know. So since we were adding cattle and goats and stuff, I was creating goats and cattle from clay. So I just loved making art, you know, at that early age. Yeah.
Now you've had hundreds of exhibitions across the world. You've done commissions for some very famous people. Right. You've met some very famous people and had a lot of celebrated reviews of your work. But I'd love to take it back right to the beginning, the first time you worked with stone, the first time that you sat with one of the masters and they probably made you do some not very nice and exciting things with the stone. Mm-hmm. What were the first things you had to do?
I was attracted to make, my first sculpture then was a head, I remember very well, and I sold it very quickly. So that inspired me a little more as a youngster, so that I started getting more and more involved in it, such that as a young kid, I wouldn't spend time playing soccer balls, plastic balls, but I would spend with these masters, you know, just learning these skills, you know.
So you had a very interesting childhood because, as you've mentioned now, you were quite early on able to sell some work.
Yes.
So that means that even though you were at school, you were also becoming a young professional.
Yes.
Was the business side of what you did always quite easy to manage?
Yeah, it was quite easy to manage it at school. I was quite bright also, so that I was really excited about it, yes. And also, during those days, they also had like school annual competitions, which I used to run regularly, you know, when I was a kid then, yeah.
So that's the fun and the lighter side of the positive side of your childhood. But there were also some more difficult things that you faced, and you didn't have the easiest start in life. Yeah. So please tell us about that. Yes,
because I was born when my father had passed on. He died in June, then I was born in October. So my auntie, the sister to my father, is the one who brought me to Harare. So that's how I came in contact with these artists. So I didn't know it was going to be my lifetime vocation then, you know. But yeah, my mother was struggling and everybody was struggling to the extent that when I was supposed to do 2 years of my last college school, I decided to quit school and do sculpting full time because I thought that would bring my mother and my family out of poverty then.
So I'd love to talk about two parts of that. The one is that when you were a young man deciding that you were going to abandon school,
yes,
which no one is supposed to do, we're meant to get a proper education.
Yes.
The risk that you felt you were taking to throw everything into becoming a sculptor who relies on people loving your work, mm-hmm, were you scared to do that?
No, I was very confident at that age, and I knew somehow I would make it deep down in my heart, you know. Although I wouldn't encourage a lot of youngsters to quit school and take these such professional jobs where you are self-employed, because you have to communicate with the world, you have to be clever in order also to negotiate for whatever you'll be doing, you know. But in that case, I thought that was the best choice, and I was really confident I would make it, and I made the right decision. Yeah.
You certainly did, because you're acclaimed all over the world.
Yeah.
But there was another driver at that point that made you embrace sculpting and do it full time, and that was the simple need to make money to support your family.
Yes, definitely that was the need, yeah. And I could see I would do it, and somehow I've managed to see it through my young sister then who was very young then to go to school, and then support a lot of other relatives and the community at large. So I've seen a few youngsters going through the university through my work, so I'm really happy about that.
I know as well that at school you were good at science and maths. You in fact even trained a bit as an architect and a draftsman.
Yes.
Do you ever wonder about pursuing a different life, like if you had carried on and become an architect?
No, I wouldn't. I think I would like to work with my stones. Now, of late, I've also been trying to paint a little bit. I've started painting. I think I would like to be an artist myself, yeah. I play a little bit of guitar, but I'm not very good at that. But I just love the arts. I wouldn't choose anything else besides the arts, yeah.
So in terms of the arts, you are well known as someone who's exhibited publicly. But there's also a lot of commission work that you do.
Yes.
And some of those commissions just disappears into very wealthy people's private collections.
Yes.
How much art would you say you've got in those collections, and how much art is out in the public for us all to see?
Yeah, it's very difficult to tell because I was working through different galleries here in Africa and also in Europe and America. Sometimes they don't tell you where they end up to be, but maybe you just get names. But definitely I've got a few pieces in America. Atlanta Airport, for instance, Benson Park Sculpture Park in Colorado, where they buy artists from different artists from the world. It's public displays, very big pieces, some of them like 12 feet big. And in Belgium, I've got a few at cultural places, centers also, and a few in public places, yeah, in private collections as well, big commissions, yes.
I think it's an amazing thing that has happened with your sculptures is because they're made of stone and therefore are able to withstand the elements. Mm-hmm. You encounter them in public parks. You're walking through a beautiful natural space and suddenly you see this thing there is stone meeting a natural creation, an inspiration that's come from you.
Yes.
Where do those inspirations come from?
They come, the inspirations come from my day-to-day life, you know, the people I meet, and basically I celebrate life in a positive way, you know. That's why I dwell mostly on family values, mother and children playing together, or children playing by themselves. And I don't put any facial features because for me, we are all one people, you know. So that's why my pieces, I think that's why they relate to anybody all over the world, because they don't have facial features. It could be a mother and child from Zimbabwe or from America or from South Africa or Tanzania or Zanzibar or Korea. So wherever I go, people see themselves. And basically, because we are human beings, we behave in the same way. Children from all over the world, they do leapfrogs, they do handstands, and they swing their mothers and even fathers, they swing their children. It's a basic form of humanity, you know. Yes.
So you've mentioned a few things there that are unique to your style, but of course Zimbabwe has a rich heritage of stone sculptors.
Yes.
When you first started doing something that was what would later become the Dominic Benhura style, was there resistance from other people saying, why aren't you just doing the normal sculptures that everybody else is doing?
It's true, but luckily there was a guy called Roy Guthrie who was running a very big sculpture park then. He saw my work and he thought, you know, just continue working in that direction, you're going to make it. Yeah. And I was also doing a lot of plants and animals, which I still do. I always break away from my figurative work and also not just the positive side of life, but also touch aspects like HIV and AIDS and stuff like that. So I do a lot of stuff, but my main theme is to show the happiness, celebrate life, you know. So that's my favorite area, although sometimes in between I do experiments with different stuff.
So there's something I've always wanted to know, is you have an idea or an inspiration, and you have a piece of stone. Do you see the sculpture in the stone before you actually start working with it? Or is it an idea that you have and you just somehow force it into that stone?
No, it's the other way around. I work from ideas, then go and look for the stones. So what I do, if I have an idea, then I have to go to the quarry and then select my stones for that idea. But then I work with other artists, so it's easier. But when I go to the quad, then I just bring a whole lot of track because other artists work the other way. So I've got a small workshop which I've been running since 1994 called Dominic Studio. So there I also work with a lot of budding artists who have been training over the years. And I'm happy to say at least 10 of them have moved away now. They've bought their small houses and they're working from home. But I also get a lot of international artists coming to work with me. So for a lot of artists, I find they see the ideas in the stone and then they work. But I work the other way. And I'm lucky because I trained a little bit as an architecture apprentice, so I can actually do my sketches and draw. But once I start working, then I throw away the sketch because I don't want to be restricted by the idea. So I just throw it away. The whole idea of just sketching is just to remember the idea. But once I start working, I don't look at this. So I just let it evolve, you know.
And how long do the pieces take? Obviously, it differs in size. So let's say a piece that's about 1 meter by 1 meter. How long does it physically take to make that?
Actually, it's difficult to put time into it. Why? Because I work from inspiration. So I work on sometimes on different pieces and leave it for a while. A small piece might take me 6 months to finish, depending on the inspiration. So I work back and forth. Although from experience, because I've been sculpting for over 3 decades now, I could go very fast. But it's not the idea of producing like we are making chairs. Art is different from making, chairs or beds. You have to work with inspiration and let it evolve. So it's like if somebody asks me how many hours do you work, it's difficult. Because sometimes I just wake up at night. My workshop is right next door. Sometimes I work at night. Sometimes I spend the day relaxing a bit. But I'm working nearly every day of my life here.
And then another thing that's key to your style is the multiple textures that you manage to coax out of the stone. Right. If one looks at the traditions of the more artifact kind of, or craft kind of Zimbabwean sculptures, there was not that much textural work.
Right.
Whereas with you, you'll have multiple textures, sometimes even multiple colors out of one piece of stone.
Yes.
How difficult are those techniques to get right?
No, it's not difficult at all. It's just a question of finishing a certain tool, using different tools to finish at different points,
And then a question which is maybe a bit cheeky, but if someone was drawing a picture with pencil and they made a mistake, they could just erase it. I'm guessing you can't do that with stone. Do you ever make mistakes?
Sometimes those mistakes may become really nice, coincidental, but it's very rare now because with the experience also, you know how to control your materials and stuff. But here and there, sometimes you feel it didn't come right, then you rework it until it comes to it. You just make it thinner. Yeah. Yeah.
You spoke a lot about inspiration and where that comes from, but you're also very well known for commissions ranging from things for governments through to the United Nations, through to various parks, through to various museums and galleries. When they present you with a request for a commission, is it difficult to find the hook that you're going to use for that inspiration?
No, it's not easy, but the most difficult part of late, since last year, I've started doing portraits. That's the most, that was I've done 2 so far. But I think that's the most challenging, unlike other portraits, because when I'm making you, it has to really look like you. Because I've got twin daughters myself, but I realized when you're asked to make a portrait in stone, it's very, because once you take it away, like you said, any slight part of the nose, then it's no longer you. No matter how correct you got the other part of the nose, half the nose, So I think when you are asked to make a portrait of a human being, then that's really tough. But I enjoy it because it's really challenging. Because basically people are almost the same, because we've got both eyes on either side of the nose and the mouth. So to bring out you, not your brother or your father, then that's really challenging. But I think it's the most exciting part. Now I'm very confident I can really make a portrait of somebody.
It's interesting you're doing that now because in your better known work, which has the figures, you deliberately didn't use facial features.
Yes. Yeah, it was by coincidence. Somebody wanted to commission a portrait, a very important, but then I refused. Then they said, no, for all the people, I think we have to do it because of the importance of that person. So I did it. That was my first ever. So I did the second one now, which people like very much. So I hope I'm going to do more. I really like them because I think it's the most challenging part of sculpture so far. So.
Even after 3 decades, you're embracing new challenges. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, because with art, you will never become a master, really, because it's a learning process. That's why our art also evolves with time, So you can never say I'm the best, because you never know what the youngsters will come up with or the old masters will come up with. It's all about finding, researching all the time.
So I know something that many people are interested in as well is on the really big pieces that you work on. Some of them are 12 meters high even. How do you manage to physically do that? It must just be a very difficult thing to work with a massive piece of stone.
No, not at all. It's like asking a musician playing the strings with his fingers. You think maybe they get sore. It's just the technique eventually. You don't really need muscle. You can say I'm a very small person, I think it's just the techniques which you develop over the time and how to take away big chunks within a short space of time and using very little energy, It's just secrets of techniques, I think. It's very simple. That's why I sometimes even work with kindergarten kids, they come and practice with their mothers and stuff. They can actually use the tools. You just teach them how to hold and then the angles, the right angles, and how to sit properly without sitting comfortably, and you work, it's so easy.
So a thread that runs through all of your work is that even from when you had first started out and getting a bit of acclaim and a bit of money for your work, you started plowing that back into developing the skills of other young Zimbabwean sculptors or potential sculptors and even some other kinds of artists. Why was that so important to you?
Why? Because when I said earlier, I used to work at Chapungu, that guy who encouraged me to continue working the way I was working. I was bringing new stuff onto the art scene, I discovered that to work from that center, you were given like a residence program. And in the end, I was given like a permanent residence. But I realized a lot of youngsters whom I felt maybe were even better than me didn't have the opportunity to get there. So I thought when I bought my first house, a bigger house, my second house actually, which had a bigger space, I didn't need the whole space, so I just invited others. So I told him I'm going to move and work from home. That's how I started the Dominic studio in 1994. So even now when I'm here, artists are working from there. I thought it was important to give everybody an opportunity, But I'm happy to say we've got 3 or 4 really mature artists, also professional artists, who started even earlier than me working from there permanently.
And is your drive there the furtherance of art, or is your drive there giving means of income to those people?
Yeah, no, obviously we don't take, is to give them the opportunity to export, to work, give them material and the exposure, because I get a few people coming through the place, So it's promoting, for me it's also good to work with good artists. It's also good to interact with people who are so enthusiastic, especially the young ones, to move forward, because they will always be there to challenge you as well. So it's really good for me as well. We share ideas really. So it's not like teaching really, we share ideas. I ask them also what they feel about my work, honestly. So as a result, we develop this relationship because we meet every day, very frank with each other for the good of the whole art movement in our country.
So you mentioned that the younger people you work with sometimes give you artistic inspiration, but I'm interested in the techniques of working with stone, because of course human beings working with stone started happening even before human beings were what they are now.
Yes.
Have the techniques changed from literally millions of years ago?
Yeah, I think so. Why? Because of also the evolution of tools. We've got better tools, we've got better tools, and also the techniques will change obviously, because like now I can easily construct a piece which I want because of what drills now, where you can pin the pieces and balance them, But I still give very much respect to those people who started sculpting years back. Like for example, in Zimbabwe, what we call Great Zimbabwe, there were some Zimbabwe, well now what has become Zimbabwean bird on our national flag. They made them from very primitive tools, I think. So the stone sculpture movement in Zimbabwe, it's more like a tradition, and technically I think those people are very good because they use primitive tools than us, That's why even if I look at the architecture of Lombeck, I really like those cathedrals I see all over the world, because those people, to cut those blocks of granite, like even in Zimbabwe, you see, but they managed to really make it almost precise, and then build. I think they were the techniques, they were primitive, but I think were very good.
And then in terms of how the youngsters are working, is there something that you would like them to take forward in terms of the art and the inspiration that they do, or do you leave that very much up to each individual?
Yeah, no, art is all about each individual, because I don't expect them to think like me, and I don't think they expect me to think like them also, because art is something which is within you. You are born with it. It's either you have it or you don't have it, but whatever you have belongs to you, not to me. Everybody is unique in his own way. Yeah.
So when you started out as a sculptor, did you ever think that it would take you as far as it has around the world and meeting some of the great people that you have?
Yeah, it was my wish, because I knew other artists were doing that. It was my wish. So, but then nothing happens overnight. It took me a long time. So I always tell people that nothing is easy, and you have to continue working, otherwise then you will go down quickly. So you just have to work as hard as you used to be from the beginning. You can't not stop. Yeah.
And I know in terms of some of the presentations that you've done and art that you've put into various galleries and various collections, you did some work for the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and you got to meet former President Mandela.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was the best moments in my life ever, because when I was told I was going to meet him personally, I was so really excited. So I came, and I couldn't believe that he had an appointment with him. It was so special in the sense that I really greeted him, and he sat right next to me on a simple bench in the garden of his offices there. It was wonderful. Sense of humor, the humanity. You are so human, and I felt so comfortable. Unlike when you meet other politicians, I've met a few, when I go around, sometimes you feel intimidated, or you feel very, like you are nothing, but with him you just feel very, very nice person, very warm environment, I treasure every moment I spend with him, yes. It was really, really nice.
You speak of warmth, and it's always seemed to me that an artist who's working out of Africa, sometimes there are some difficulties they face in terms of distribution and getting to the rest of the world.
Right.
But they always have this warm continent to come back to and get inspiration from.
Right.
So do you think that coming from Africa and from Zimbabwe has given you an edge into getting the international exhibitions and the acclaim that you've got?
Not really. You'll find even an artist here in South Africa or in Mozambique or in probably, especially the southern part. I think the western part of Africa, like Senegal and stuff, they are well catered for because, those are French-speaking colonies. They've pushed their artists through museums in Paris and everywhere, in museums. And like, us, we were colonized by maybe Britain and stuff. They haven't really pushed us to the levels which the West Africans have been done, So unfortunately, as much as good as we will find, there are very few artists from Southern Africa. We are in important museums around the world. So that's a really sad story. I hope maybe African states should put up maybe important museums so that we also have a lot of our artists being preserved in our local museums here in Africa.
Yeah, they definitely should.
Yes,
We've spoken about Europe and the United States as far as that goes, but you've also exhibited and worked a fair amount of your work into Asia.
Yes.
What is the interest there in your art?
Oh, it's huge. But you see, I wish there would be more artists being given such exposure. I was lucky because I started early. Maybe that's why I found my way into these places. But unfortunately, for a lot of artists, they don't have such opportunities, which is quite sad, I think. Indeed, I think we are very competent artists from Africa as well. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a tricky question, which is the worst question to ask an artist maybe, but what do you think it is that brings people from all over the world to enjoy your work? What do you think the universal appeal comes from?
Yeah, I think probably I was so lucky that God gave me the idea of coming up with children and mother and child, because everybody celebrates mothers and child. And I think generally, even in the animal world, even if you look at lions, mothers always look after the children. And whether we believe it or not, I think mothers generally play a very important role in people's lives. So when people see them, then they feel good. It just makes them smile. Yeah.
And that is true from South America through to the top parts of Europe.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Then those are some of the positive images that you've done. But you've had to do commissions for requests that deal with human rights issues and also afflictions that humanity has, like AIDS, elements related to violence. Commission which was raising awareness around landmines and the victims' landmines. What is it like working with darker subject matter?
Yeah, it is good. Because those are pieces which you then make under a little bit of, it touches your soul, in a different way. Happiness touches your soul in a different, but it's part and parcel of the life. And you feel honored if you are told, if people feel you can bring that awareness against such ill treatment of kids, being teenage pregnancy or HIV and AIDS. Because with my piece which I did, the HIV and AIDS piece, it weighed about 5 tons, and when it was taken around, now it's in the United States, it was commissioned by Chapungu Sculpture Park. I could see people in tears, That was when there were even no drugs to treat the problem, especially the earlier days. So when I was asked to do this piece, I decided I'm going to make it very, very big. Not for the money, but to make an impression. And I also had lost a brother to the same problem, you know, 1 or 2, and some cousins, as you know, it was all over the place. So I was so happy that I could also contribute in a small way to create awareness. And when it was in the papers and everybody, they started talking about it, and you know, and I was lucky because I would have died also from the problem. Why? Because making money as a youngster those days, you know, you would hit at any girl you would want, you could do anything. And you know, when you have money, very few people control you because of poverty in Africa, you know. All the relatives, whatever you do, they'll just keep quiet, you know. They don't want to offend you because they want to help one way or the other. But luckily, I started traveling at an early age, so I would see documentaries about Uganda then, you know. In Holland, when I traveled, you know, I would see documentaries which we couldn't see here in Africa. So I would come and tell the other artists that this is dangerous, you know. But unfortunately, quite a few didn't listen, you know. So we're talking about it to the one of Chapungu Sculpture Park, you know. I said, no, we should conscientize these artists. I saw some documentaries, they will perish. And that's when he said, no, maybe do a sculpture. I said, I would like to do a sculpture. But he said, oh, no, please make a sculpture for us, for our permanent collection. So I did it, you know. So I think, yeah, as difficult as I said as it is, but if you're making a sculpture which will protect people in the long run, to talk about, especially for that, you like the other piece about which I was commissioned by UNDP about peace. So they just told me they were celebrating every year. I think they got a peace day. So they said make something out of it for it. So I decided I would talk about children, you know, because those are the most affected. You know, whether you go in Afghanistan or Somalia or here in Mozambique, we lost a lot of children were maimed. I would see it when I was a little kid. Youngsters who would be great footballers, you know, lost their football because you never know the potential of children. So I thought I would capture on the kids, which is anyway my favorite theme. So, but it worked out well. They liked it very much. They did a very nice lunch about it, and it touched people's souls. It was just a way of telling those warlords that it's not the way to go, you know.
It's the power of art and education.
Exactly. Yeah.
So commissions like that show the power of education and also the power of art. But you mentioned something there that as a young man you could potentially have gone off the rails a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting here looking very slick and very professional now, but I know that you were Rastafarian in your youth. And maybe if we were interviewing you now, it would be a very different kind of interview to interviewing you then.
Probably.
Was that just a necessary phase, do you think? Something you just grew out of?
I think it was a necessary phase for some reasons, because now I've got children who are nearly 20 years, my twin daughters now. I think you can tell them from experience that experience is the best teacher. Now I know how to tell them this is wasting time, what is important, what's not, you know. And sometimes it's not necessary to go through all those phases, because you just lose a lot of time and waste time. Because now I'm very sober, I don't drink, I don't take a smoke, I don't touch anything. So I find I can work more hours, I wake up, no hangover, no headaches, nothing. I'm very clear-minded, you know. So it was very good that I went through that and managed to survive, you know.
Well, we're very glad you did.
Yes.
And the sculpture lovers around the world are as well.
Yes.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned about the importance of putting things back into the community. And you've been very humble. You've just mentioned your small studio. But there are other things like the Tengenenge sculpture community, and also you being a patron of various other schools of art. And I want to go back to what drives you to want to create things like that and make those opportunities for people, because many people don't do that. Why do you?
Well, I think also it has to do with the background, you know, like if you're an orphan, like in my case, you know. So I talk about my auntie because she was the most visible person, because I was staying with her. But usually in Africa, the communities, the extended family system really works, and the society at large is like one family. That's why if there is a funeral, especially even here, I think if you go to Zululand in the rural areas, the whole community goes for funerals, they walk for distance and stuff. So I know somewhere out there, you know, having been born and bred in the rural areas, I know there's always need to try and give everybody an opportunity for education. because you never know, because you never know who will be a good doctor or a scientist from Africa, you know. So we just try, you know, one way to just give a little bit. Of course, obviously, we cannot do much, you know, as an individual. But if everybody tries and do something to the next person to them, I'm sure slowly we'll get there. I'm sure that's what happens. Because here in Africa, it's a different world together than the first world, you know, because they have all the resources and abundance. So all those few individuals who are making a little bit of it, maybe just share it with others, you never know. Maybe out of 10, you might get 2 really people who also do the same to another 2 people. It's better than nothing, really.
How large is the Tanganyika sculpture community?
It's quite a very big community. I think we've got people staying there. They stay in traditional arts. This place was founded in the early 60s by Tom Bloomfield. Then that's where most of the pioneer artists in Zimbabwe came from, really. So it was a farming community during earlier. They were planting tobacco. Then in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia then was under sanctions. They couldn't export their tobacco, so there were some stones, sculpturing stones there. So the guy decided that maybe why don't we try to sculpt? He loved sculpting. That's how all the sculpting started. You know. So because it was a farming community, there's so many farm workers, you know, maybe 1,000 or whatever. So those from generation to generation, they've been passing on their knowledge to the artists. So at any given point, I'm sure we've got 500 people staying there in traditional arts. They've never developed them into modern houses, you know. So they live in small traditional arts, like typical rural life, you know. So it's quite an exciting place, which is one of its kind, I think, in Africa.
And almost everyone there is involved in sculpting?
Yeah, so what I did when I bought it in 2007, when the owner wanted to retire, wanted to go to Holland. So he wanted to sell it to dealers overseas. So I thought it's a national thing, because that's where our stone sculptures started, you know. So I bought it. And also I wanted to keep it going, because tourism had slumped, as you know. We have very few tourists. So I thought maybe I could try and keep it afloat. So it worked out well. We tried and kept it afloat up to now. So, but I'm currently in the government, I think the National Gallery wants to take it over from me also now to run it at the national level, which I'm really excited about. We are talking about that. Because there is no place like that where you have got such a large community of artists, generations passing on their knowledge to their grandchildren, third, fourth generation. So we've got artists there, one of them who is nearly 100 years old, but is still sculpting. So the good thing is the ladies and the men, or everybody sculpts there. Basically everybody, even little boys and girls, they sculpt. But the only problem I had was that unfortunately, they were not going to school. All they were doing with their children was just teach them to sculpt. So when I got to the place, I introduced a kindergarten. So now kids are going to learning to sculpt. I sought some books, and through some friends of mine, we are running a kindergarten. But unfortunately now the kids have to walk about 10 kilometers one way to the nearest school. So we're trying to lobby the government to do something about it. But yeah, the problem was also that the only problem I had with that is a very special place, but they were not doing anything about the children's education. And it is not very far from Harare, unfortunately. It's only 2 kilometers, which is not very remote. And I thought it wasn't right, yeah.
You're a very busy man.
No, no. No, I've got a lot of time, especially if you work for yourself, you can plan and balance your time, really, you know.
So we've spoken about that sculpture community, and that's something that you wanted to do, and you saw this natural heritage there. Mm-hmm. But I know that you're also good friends with Oliver Mtukudzi, mm-hmm. and he kind of got you involved in his projects as well.
Right.
So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, with Oliver Mtukudzi, I think where I got involved is I knew him as a little boy, you know. So somehow he knew about me also. So one day there was like a talk show where they brought in artists, where a place called Book Cafe. It's like a bar where artists converge, and then they have like ask people questions. They bring different artists to talk about their careers, to inspire other artists. So I don't know how it so happened that day somebody called me and him at the same time to talk to other artists, different art disciplines, you know. So we met there and we started talking. Then the next thing I saw, he visited me, like, he just enjoyed meeting me, you know. So that was maybe 10 years ago. Ever since we've been communicating, you know, and seeing each other, he's become more like a brother to me. And I see him anytime I want, I can call him anytime I want. So with this, I knew he was building a center. So I always visited also to see what's happening there. Then there was that tragic story of his son passing away. So he decided to become automatically his patron for that foundation for his kids. You know, where we do solo arts festival, where we bring in any artist who thinks he can perform on your own, especially musicians. Then we come up with your guitar, if you can do drums, which is working out very well when we were working with little kids. So we've got schools, solo arts festival, then we've got mature arts festival, which is becoming an annual thing for the past 3-4 years. Yeah. But yeah, I think he's doing a really good job for the arts as well. He's somebody who inspires me also to try and nurture talent. Yeah.
So this is an original Dominic Benhura, and it's brand new. You finished it last night?
Oh yes, yeah.
And then it came on a plane, so I'm guessing it wasn't just as hand luggage. But how do we know that this is yours? Some of the elements are in the style, some of the elements are the different compositions that you use, the different stones that you use. But one of the key things is it's another example of an adult and a child, a mother and a baby. Why are you so interested in working with that?
Yeah, the mother and children, also maybe primarily because, like I said earlier on, I was brought, my father died whilst I was in my mother's womb. So, and my auntie helped my mother to bring me up. So I'm also biased in that sense towards the women because of that. So I grew up very close to women.
Yes.
Yeah. And they'll look after me, they'll carry me on their back, they'll carry me in their hands, you know. So I find traditionally in Zimbabwe or here in South Africa or in Mozambique, most of the fathers, even in Malawi, most of the fathers are going different countries looking for jobs to work. Even history has it, you know, that the fathers will go away and work in mines, in farms, and the kids are always close to always with their mothers. So we find, unlike Europeans, you know, you always travel with your wife and family, you are always together. But it says traditionally it's very normal for a husband to go and work away. So the children are very close to their mothers. So maybe unconsciously, maybe that might be the reason why I'm so biased to the kids. But because of that now, wherever I go now, I find in America or in Asia or in Europe, they call them housewives, you know, because it's also a job. Like now people are even in a traditional, like Africans are beginning to understand that women will also be doing work by looking after kids. So wherever I go, most of the time I find women with the children, playing with the children in parks or taking them to kindergarten and doing all sorts of things. So that inspires me on a day-to-day basis. And also I've got 3 daughters and 2 sons, and sometimes I do mothers with 2 kids. Yeah. Mostly, I don't know why, for I do boys in between, but most of them is always girls. And because one, I find the dresses also, they create a nice form of art, unlike just a pair of trousers when you look at a man, you know. So that's why I find there are more models of women than men. So generally women, because of their body and because of even their voices are so soft that, you know, naturally attracted to them. Yeah.
So then tell us about how this one came about. You often start off with a drawing and then you find a piece of stone that you can create it. Is that what happened here? It was a drawing and then...
Some of the drawings are only in the head. Usually it's not physical, yeah. Then I actually draw on the stone itself, then start working. Yes.
And if I were to look at this, I see that there's a lot of movement in it, even though it's a static physical piece of stone, heavy to lift. How do you manage to capture that?
Yeah, I like making my pieces whimsical, you know, and playful, and then play with balance and gravity. So I balance the bass as I work. So sometimes it looks tippy and yet it can actually stand, you know. It's just one of those techniques which I really enjoy. Because when I started sculpting, most of our sculptures or the hands and the legs were all very statical, stick to the. So I just wanted to release, make it the stone look light and happy, Yes.
And another characteristic is that there aren't features on the face.
Yes, that's true. So that the features, because when you make art, you are not making it for a particular audience or particular fans. You just make it for everyone to enjoy it. So even when the kids, when they see these kind of pieces, whether they are from any part of the world, they can see it's more like a mother and child playing together, and they will enjoy it because they can imagine maybe it's them or somebody they know with the kid, or even somebody who doesn't have children. When they see this, they say, "Oh no, I know my cousin has got a little girl. It reminds me of my cousin." I've had things like that. It reminds me of my friend's daughter playing with his daughter or whatever. So I like it that way. Yeah.
And then the stone, the actual physical stone that it's made out of, it comes from Zimbabwe, of course, but is there something unique to that stone in working with it?
No, that's good quality stones. There are some stones which look similar in color, but they are not good quality stones. But now, because when I make pieces, sometimes they are displayed in public places where there are different temperatures. This kind of stone can withstand extreme temperatures, whether cold or very hot. Yeah. So that's why we have them permanently displayed around the world, because it's the quality type of stone we can find in Zimbabwe.
And how long ago was it that you started mixing two kinds of stones together? Because some of your early work was just of one kind of stone.
Long back. I think I've been using the techniques for more than 20 years. But this one is a recent one where I put actual texture with this stone. Sometimes I do inlays, but now I'm using it outside like this. Yeah.
And then one of the other things I wanted to know is, unfortunately in the art world, there are sometimes cases of fraud.
Yes.
How do we know that this is definitely yours? I know because you told me, but if people were to just encounter the sculpture, how would they know that it's an original?
Yeah, they can take it from me because, because of the internet and stuff, you can easily tell who is doing who. That's why if you see a Brancusi or a Michelangelo piece, you can tell it's his, So this, I can swear, this is me.
And if people are collectors, they can also see your that signature on the back.
Yeah, I actually write my complete name. I've always written it like that. And then I put a TM. Why? Because of that fraud. People were beginning to imitate me. And so I had to trademark my work in America. So that's why I put a TM, Dominic Benhura TM. Because I was beginning to have people not only copying this style, but even copying my signature. And unfortunately, some of them were being sold even here in South Africa. But we are trying to work on it, yeah.
So taking us back to when you were 13, did you ever think that these words that first you learned to write and your name came, did you ever think there would be a famous trademark?
I don't know whether it's so famous, I've just used it.
So there are lots of elements in your style that are very recognizable, and certainly one of them that strikes me right now, because I'm sitting on this side of it, is you capture that movement, and also you play around so much, like you were saying earlier, with gravity. Mm-hmm. Is it difficult for you to get it right, that this isn't going to tip, or by now is it a simple thing?
I think everything is simple. Like I said the other one, with practice, then you know how to do it. It becomes much, much easier with time. I have no problem in balancing them, yeah.
And was it always easy for you to work in a 360 way? Because we've turned this around to look at the signature, but the back is as interesting a sculpture as the front.
Yeah, well, I think that's why, because it's supposed to be three-dimensional, so you have to have a complete all-around, make it right all around, yes. It's
a marvelous piece. Thank you for sharing it with us. And the last question I'd love to ask is to find out where we can find all these pieces of art. I know that they're in sculpture parks around the world, in galleries around the world. But if I wanted to buy this, how would I do that?
I've worked in Africa. I'm represented by my friend Glenn Sullivan. He's based here in Cape Town. Yeah. You can easily find it here, or in Zimbabwe, where I work from my workshop right in Harare. It's so easy to find. Yeah.
You just follow the sound of 500 people sculpturing and look for the man in the middle.
Yeah, it's quite easy to find us there. Yes. Yeah.
Dominic, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
And for sharing us the sculptures and the stories.
Nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.